So this is a systems administration best practices free for all. Just start off with questions. I'm hoping this will be the conversation. How do we collaborate better on the things that are not competitive? What are the tricks that we've learned? What are the things that we need to work on? If you're okay, I'll start off just asking a question on workforce development and recruiting and hiring and training people. Do you have the staff and the skill sets that you need? And where are the gaps and what's been successful for you?
I guess I'll start. I just raised it before you can. So I'm up here as sort of the token vendor. Used to work for Chevron for HPC for 15 years, but I'm going to try to give a point of view. I've been with Altair for about 18 months now, so I'm going to give sort of the vendor view on this, which I thought was very different when I first started thinking about it from a workforce perspective, but the more I thought about it, it was pretty much exactly what we were running into at Chevron and others is everybody's trying to train up for more and more. I mean, I've got on my job description to become certified in cloud because cloud is where a lot of things are going. Even, you know, a lot of HPC environments are at least utilizing cloud in some fashion. But it's been hard. It's been hard to be able to spend the time. It's been to train up. It's been hard to hire people that are willing to either have the background or willing to actually get certified and trained up in any, whether it be cloud, whether it be Python, Kubernetes, whatever the case may be. It's people want to train, but it's I found it very difficult. And in today's environment, it's even tougher, at least for us and a lot of companies. People aren't hiring. So you're going to have to train internally if you're really wanting to get somebody into a position. So I don't know that I don't think we're doing anything that's really extra successful right now. I think we're still working on it. You know, trying to use Udemy to train up, trying to train people in person, which I think I had a discussion with Tommy about training people, and really it came down to you have to let people fail, I think, and you kind of help them along and kind of consult with them. And I even found on myself, I can learn very slowly if I'm just tagging along with somebody, but if I'm thrown in there and saying, you're in charge of this and talk to me every now and then, but don't talk to me, you know, talk to a mentor often, I learn at least probably 3 or 4 times faster doing that, but I also screw up. And you know, in my case, I'm working with a customer a lot of times, which is a little tougher. I think that's the biggest difference. I'm working with external customers, and I think you had to balance that a little bit more than maybe internal TAC or, you know, BP or some other customer or some other company.
It's hard to train somebody when the systems are working.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have time.
You're fighting the fire and you're under pressure to get it back running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've got to find people that are willing and able to learn and diagnose the problems and then just have ideas of how to get through it. And it's not always your classic CS person.
Well, in fact, this is really one of the big aspects about HPC training and administrators that I think is important, and we had this discussion over lunch, is when I started, I actually was a programmer. I wrote computational fluid dynamics codes. I wrote the algorithms. I ran on the systems. I used them. I was a user. I understood the pains of being a user. And so when I'm now doing as system administrator, I say, okay, the whole goal of our job is to make the user's life easier. Okay, so what can we do to make the user's life easier? Unfortunately, a lot of the new guys that I'm training up come from specifically an OS or Linux background, and they don't have some of the HPC knowledge of understanding how the jobs work, synchronized, parallel I/O, and a lot of those things. And I'm concerned because also I see it out there in our workforce too. There's a lot of aging workforce. But a lot of us are getting close to retirement age. including myself. You know, how do we make sure that our knowledge, which we've been through the whole, you know, going from when we had gigaflop systems all the way now to petaflop systems. We've been there. The younger generation hasn't. But like Jay and Kent were just saying, I find trying to train people and have them just shoulder surf on me when there's a problem happening kind of works, but inevitably they seem to learn the most when they actually get their feet into the problem and have to fail every once in a while and realize, oh yeah, that's not the problem. Go figure it out the other way. You know, 80 to 90% of what I do is troubleshooting. Just trying to figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong, whether it's deploying a new system and trying to figure out how things work, or, you know, taking some user code, hey, I'm getting some weird variability in performance, can you help me figure out what's going on? You know, so I don't know how you train people without letting them fail. It's almost like we need to have a cluster or a cluster training in such that we inject all the failures we've normally seen in the past and have them fix it.
And we're always trying to get people to fix things fast.
Right.
Sometimes they get the idea, if I don't know the answer immediately, I need to go ask somebody else.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's better to have them look, do some Google searching, and find something out and try and figure it out themselves, but still know when to stop.
Right.
Don't
Or
waste
when,
too much
when
time.
to ask.
Yes.
When to actually ask somebody else
Right.
for some help.
Yeah, my company and myself have kind of So we've tried to fill that kind of space or hire for that kind of role. And my background is PhD in physics, and I've taken over a lot of that analysis, digging into things and trying to understand why things fail. And I think having that background has been really helpful. And so looking maybe outside of the normal sysadmin world, but looking at people that have a training in science and deeper math problems, and just kind of figuring out how to decompose a complicated system into something you can investigate slowly, I think has been one aspect of looking for people in that world that has been really helpful to kind of fill those spaces.
Have y'all seen any kind of internship interest, or anybody that's willing to sit down with the sysadmins and do that?
So we've discussed this an awful lot, and I would love to implement an internship program. Trying to get any of my senior sysadmins to carve out some time to be the mentors is really challenging. One area that maybe as a university we're trying to help do, and we work with the oil and gas companies here in Austin, is, you know, sometimes they'll pay us to have student interns, but normally they're applications people, they're not sysadmins. And so I don't know how we can translate that. Where we've had some success, and something that we've been trying to do more, is encourage our students to participate in the student cluster competitions that SC or ISC put on every year. And we've had some success of picking out one or two a year that we then try to hire after they graduate and then either become an HPC person, or I've got a couple in the system administrators group now that came through that program. But, you know, they had to build the cluster themselves, so they already had some of the experience and some of that, and at least understood some of that. I don't know how we broaden that program or somehow, but even so, we have noticed the students coming along now haven't been invested as heavily as previous years in the past. It's like they tend to lose interest very quickly. Yeah. Yeah. So, or even struggle with getting an OS deployed and how to, you know, pixie boot as your other servers and so forth. So, I don't know. I mean, I would love to see an HPC intern program for system administrators, not just for the applications teams. I think we got the applications areas covered.
Yeah, well, so in Shell we do internships. I'm hoping to get one this summer in Benevolent. We've had them in the past. The problem is HPC belongs to IT, so there is a pool of IT interns. Most of them do not have any command line experience or anything like that. So some of it is we have to, they're well supported by, you know, the company, but for the project we put them on, we have to kind of make sure it is one which an intern who may not really know very much about HPC or is unlikely to know anything about HPC can actually fulfill. So sometimes it's more about tuning what you want them to do, rather than trying to turn them into a sysadmin. That's not very meaningful to them either.
So one thing Tommy said was about the old people are kind of retiring out. One thing I've always wondered is, well, when I got into things 30 plus years ago, a system admin did almost everything. They would do networking, they would do security, and not just on their systems, across everything. When I started at Chevron originally, I did links for seismic data through a satellite to get seismic data off. I built a firewall between oil and gas companies. I didn't just do system admin. And you don't see much of that anymore because now a system admin and HPC, at least on the company, they work on HPC. They probably don't even get to touch the network necessarily in some cases. At Chevron, that had started to become separated. Security within the HPC, but not external. There's a lot of silos being created more and more, and I don't think we're better off for it from a individual capability point of view. I don't know how we change that, other than maybe move people around, which some companies do. But to me, I see that as a big change that's occurred over the past 20 plus years.
But I would say we're too big for
Well, this is the
people
thing.
to
The
do
systems have gotten
everything,
so
yeah.
big that being able, you can almost have to silo because you can't be the jack of all trades and manage the systems. And we've had to do that too, where, you know, kind of a couple of people have specialized on high-speed networks, and they kind of go between the systems. You know, a couple of people on the storage, Luster experts, they go between all the systems.
More and more silos.
More and more silo. Exactly. They don't know anything about
Which
it.
is good. They're
Right.
specialists, but then they don't get that big.
Right. They don't get the big picture view. So
you can't have a big list of rotation people.
right.
It's one person from each of the
Yeah.
specialties that's kind of on call. Like all the times we'd go visit TAC, Tommy was always having to deal
Well,
with
I'm still a
mustard
hands-on guy, and I still get the pages in the middle of the night if something happens. So, yeah, no, I got to be involved.
burnout.
I did tell Dan that if he pulled the computers away from me, then that'd be the last day I'd be on the job. So if I couldn't put my hands on it.
Any people who are still earlier in their careers that want to offer any comments or things that have been successful? Did I seem to encourage volunteerism?
So I just joined the BP Center for HPC back in the summer. I started my internship in May, started working full-time in July. And before that, I had about 2 years of computer science experience at all. Fortunately, that was also involvement in HPC. One good professor at a tiny university who wanted to see, HPC recruited me and said, "You can be a sysadmin. I see it in you." And I said, "Well, I think I want to be a programmer," but I was wrong. And learned, I think, the things that we all both love and hate about being a sysadmin, which is banging your head against a brick wall until it finally breaks through, and either you learn something or you just, break the machine beyond repair. For me, I was able to be involved in a student cluster competition, like you were saying. It was a Raspberry Pi competition. And not only was I able to assemble the cluster and install the operating system, get all of the networking configured, but I also learned how to install applications and parallelize code with MPI. And that kind of introduced me to what, I don't know, I just felt like I had this godlike power when I had all these machines running my code at the same time. And when you see, factor upon factor of efficiency optimization, it does make you feel kind of like a god. But something, I went to this Great Plains Network conference, and it's HPC, university HPC centers in the Midwest and South. And they were, talking how do we get employees with the skills that we need. And my question was like, what are you teaching the students? What do we have students graduating who even, know how to use an ls command? Not very many of them. Not very many of them. Do you have students who are, comfortable with going out and trying things that are hard and abstract and might not work the first time or the 12th time? And I think that there's a lot that we can do to invest in our schools, whether that's, just passive support of our own kids and our kids' friends, or if that's actually active support and, having training programs and workshops and getting people interested in knowing what HPC is and how fun it can be to work in and how great the job opportunities are. I mean, I think there's a lot that we can do to inspire the next generation.
One comment I'd like to make is that I've always used this term, jack of all trades and master of none. So when I was a little bit younger, I wanted to just learn everything. But I think what I see as I became a little bit wiser, that you have to a little bit focus on certain areas of things and become really good at it. And you just can't, you have to admit, you just can't do everything. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to learn, and you just have to pick what you're good at and what you're interested in. So, or otherwise, I think you're not beneficial to yourself. I mean, that's just a comment I'd like to make.
I agree with that for the most part. I think you need to understand what you're focusing on, plus a little bit, have enough knowledge of the things that connect to you so you can identify, okay, this problem, this is really a network problem. Instead of the default, oh, it must be the file system, or it must be the network, which I hear all the time. Yeah. But be able to talk with the person that is supposed to be doing the network and explain what's going on with some confidence and convince them that, yeah, it really is the network or the file system.
So how are folks getting stuff into the cloud, into cloud HPC, if we're struggling just getting it done on-prem?
That's actually a good question.
How are we
didn't
going to
bring
get
any of the-
sysadmins to
We need to see
push
if we
it
can
to the
get some of the
cloud?
other HPC at AWS and so forth.
I could, yeah, and I can talk just a little bit about it. From the vendor side, I've spent the last year or so doing Grid Engine customers into the cloud. And all these problems we're talking about on-prem, it's just so much worse in the cloud because talking about segmentation, it is like the ultimate segmentation. My last install, it took me 5 months to get the software installed. That's just the software and the NavOps part because of security. We call it the intrusion detection test. Basically, we would hit things, they'd take a week to fix it. Or say, oh yeah, we need to modify that. A week later, we'd do a little bit more. Oh yeah, you need to have that tag. I was like, do you have this listed someplace we could make it a lot faster? No. And that's not even getting to how do you get your data up there. I mean, it's not a, I can give you my personal opinions on some of this, but I think it would take way too long to get that.
Well, yeah, so officially we started in 2014. We probably started really in 2017. I did the first project in 2014 to try and move some data into the cloud, but I think what we've learned over the period as we've done it is you have to be quite picky. So getting a management dictate or move HPC to the cloud is obviously the wrong way to do it. What you have to do is move the bits which want to be in the cloud. So where we've got to is trying to run things which are heavily data intensive in the cloud is fairly hopeless. So you're much better off doing that on premise. If you're running something which is not data intensive and and kind of looks like on-premise as well. So we've come down to running our GPU code, which is not data intensive and computationally intensive, but a DGX, HDX looks the same everywhere. So there's no real difference either. It's not like you've had to tune your CPU machine or your luster storage or whatever. So it just looks a lot better. So if you can get the commercials to work, that's the next bit, of course, but if you can do all of that, then actually it starts to make sense. But it's really about picking the bit where the cloud actually is better than on-premise. Most of the stuff you can do it cheaply on-premise. That's if you're big enough, then it's just economies of scale. So.
It's hard to find the folks to find that stuff out, right? Or we're the ones stuck doing that,
So-
having to figure out, hey, how do you get this into the cloud?
Yeah, so I'm the manager, so I think it's all easy, obviously. I used to be a sysadmin, but that was about 100 years ago. So, but often it's you have the skills in the department. I mean, the cloud is not really very different to on-premise, really. There are different things of how to do it. Most of the people, if you work in HPC for long enough, I mean, pretty much everything is fairly easy because you've done all the hard problems in your career at some point. So it's really just a matter of taking all those things you've already learned and then just doing it differently again. There are lots and lots of problems. We've had plenty of problems with storage and networks and moving data and all that sort of stuff. Of course you do, but that's kind of what you do anyway. It shouldn't be a barrier.
So one thing I think Shell does very well is the collaboration and the sharing of knowledge. Just as David was very open in saying, this is what we went through, that knowledge is then shared among the different user groups in Shell and the ones that are building the infrastructure for especially the cloud project. So at least as a new person coming in, that has been extremely helpful. And I think that's something that's very needed in order for new people to be successful, and so that people don't repeat the same mistakes. So if another part of the company has already tried it and failed, we shouldn't try it again. So I think also the hiring really needs to be strategic in who's willing to put in that effort. So my background was not specifically HPC, but I did have a vast knowledge of computer programming, a different side of computer programming, but I was willing to learn. So having that culture add of someone trying to learn and add to what the company has is really important.
And I think one comment as well. I know this is about sysadmins, but the HPC department is not just made up of sysadmins. We have programmers, user support, architects, project managers, people who are writing code, scripts, all sorts of things. So some of the recruitment really is about getting people who are willing to learn, or interested and excited. It's really, really hard to go out there and hire a senior network guy. They're just really rare. So don't bother. Just get a couple of people who you can, at some point over time, train them up to be a really good network engineer. It takes time, it takes effort, and you have to kind of do the long view, and it's really, really painful, particularly if you lose a good network engineer, and Ricardo's just lost one recently, so we have a big hole and we have a pain, and it's like, it is painful, but you have to just kind of just think, okay, well, we just take the long view a bit. So.
David, do you plan projects for people so they get to see different areas in HPC?
I don't do a lot of planning, to be honest, but I think what we do is, so my group, we run 68 projects at the moment. So if somebody is interested in a project, there's probably something going on which they can be interested in. So we try and let people do what they're interested in. It doesn't always work. Some people, end up having to do stuff they're not interested in. But I think if you have that sort of width and depth, you can kind of let people specialize a bit. You can let them specialize if they want. They can be jack of all trades if they want. but you can let them try and be interested in different things. So I think that's important as well. But you can only do that if you're big enough. If you're a team of 5 people, then okay, you're gonna have to do everything. So.
Yeah, just to add to what David was just saying, this is something we actually have it's more of the culture at TAC and everything, is we don't have hard walls between the groups. Sure, we have an organizational chart. People report up the organizational chain, but you know, I've had multiple people that were in the systems group move either into the data or HPC group. I've also had people from the HPC group move into the systems group, including myself. I was originally hired for the HPC group. You know, we want people to naturally gravitate to what they feel is where they can contribute the most, and having no hard walls, like you're not siloed into your area. If you want to do something else, just let us know. Talk to us. I think that helps us be able to hire, because we can't pay in the industry like industry rates at the university. Although we pay our guys better than the regular university folks get paid. But yeah, you know, we try to give other advantages where, okay, look, you may be in the HPC group, but you know, 2 years from now, if you decide you want to go over to the data group or the visualization group, or you know, move into the systems group, that's fine. You know, we're happy as long as we got good people and they're all putting in the effort. You know, we want to make sure they find the place that they feel like they fit best.
Okay, yeah, Deepak Khosla here. So, you know, this is close to home because sysadmin is our business, and I've been watching it for the last 15 years. And the trend I see in general is, you know, we were hoping that with the whole talk about standardization and all, right, that things would get better. So one, HPC admin is a trade. There is no course or training out there. So if we want a bigger pipeline, somehow, who would get an interest to get these courses up in the university side? Right? Without it, I know everything's going to stay a trade.
I don't think you're going to get it in the university. University curriculums now are already so tight in terms of how many hours and what they have to deliver.
Right.
We tried this, and we're hopefully going to resurrect it. Unfortunately, COVID came along and we stopped it. But we are trying to offer a week-long institute every summer where people can come in, and we start with bare metal. They get a handful of nodes. At the end of the week, the goal is to have them running MPI jobs through a scheduler on a parallel file system on their cluster of nodes. We're hoping to resurrect that. Again, it takes time and effort, and it's not funded effort, unfortunately, from our point of view. We have all funded projects that we're supposed to be delivering on, and so we're hoping to resurrect that again. Yeah, I mean, our goal really is to get people in there and just get their hands experience and just, you know, troubleshoot, figure out, you know, how, when things don't work, what to do.
Right. So with the declining interest rate, which I think is, then you have the second problem where HPC is always leading edge and bleeding edge. You know, you take something like Microsoft. Okay, they had, if you look back 10 years, you know, if you were on their platform compared to what it is now, the only way they found solving it is automate, build more tools in, but they can do that because everything is integrated, right? They can build this thing that scales and helps, so the number of admins you need per 100 servers, you know, cuts down by a factor of 10. We've tried, and you cannot do that right? You kill HPC by that model. So I think these two factors really make it tough to find the right people who are interested, give them the training, right? And then I don't see it easily going away.
All right, so we're talking about collaboration and learning other people's jobs and stuff, and I'm in a new job, so I've been learning a lot, actually. But what I wanted to say was, when we wanted to replicate the data off of Frontier, I then had to do it 5 other times, right? Because there are 7 other times from all the different little systems. And I'm dead serious. Every time it turned out that there was a firewall rule that was implemented incorrectly. Every time. It was hilarious. But we had a new person on our team, and I said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to set a meeting up with the sysadmin that's in charge of that system and the networking guy, and then I'm just going to continually bang on it until one of them goes through. You know, says, oh, that's what the issue is, right? And that's what we did. I'm remote, so there wasn't a lot of screen sharing, but I would think that with y'all that are not remote, you could do that, right? And give it to a new hire. Hey, here's a not urgent thing that needs to get done, right? But it needs to get done. And then we're going to set you up with these 3 other people. Y'all are going to have an hour meeting to fix this, even if the 3 other people are very experienced, right? And they'll go into the meeting, and the experienced guy might literally just be like, this is 100% a network problem. And then the new person can say, how do you know that, right? And then they can talk about it, and then it can actually get fixed, and they can learn something, right? I think that that's the way training gets done, and they feel like they achieved something. I don't know if the 3 people that are in the room are actually happy about it or not, but I think it could be helpful.
Part of the challenge on that is every time there is a problem, it's an urgent one that it absolutely has to be fixed because the cluster's down or something's not running because the file system's offline or something. And yeah, so it's hard to weigh because you can't take downtime on a big, expensive production cluster.
Eric. How does Rice managing systems, and how do you leverage the students, and how do you help work with industry with some of these challenges?
Right. So I think what's interesting, looking at specifically on the HPC side, right, is that if we look at our students coming out of CS or ECE, they're really not learning, like you say, sort of the skills that apply directly to being system administrators. So we do summer internship programs with our students, and those are primarily in the sort of software development programming side of things. And it's only if somebody gets really close enough to the systems and show an interest in the underlying systems that it becomes a conversation about, well, there's much more beneath there that you can actually go ahead and take a look at. And so yeah, I think looking at, like you mentioned, sort of the university education is not necessarily trying to develop people to work in that space.
It's interesting. Myself included, we tend to have the best success with engineers because normally they're troubleshooters and they're like, okay, we'll figure out how to make it work. We'll figure out a workaround, get it working, and then we'll come back and actually, get a real fix or get the real thing. But the first thing is get the code working or get the system back up operational. From the engineering point of view, even if it is some duct tape or baling wire. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. One interesting thing I've come across and had to learn is now I'm also become a plumber and an electrician because now I have to deal with plumbing and pump circulation and pressure drops across CDUs and understand electrical, like harmonics and all the power distribution and so forth. So yeah, I'm really a jack of all trades now.
Are there other topics that people want to bring up while we've got this group?
So one thing I'll add is that, what was mentioned before, sometimes, a problem happens and you need to get it fixed quickly, right? And so having that example of, the 3 experts and like the newbie in the room, what has helped me personally has, being new to Shell is recording those sessions, having, the problems gets fixed, asking questions, but they're fixed in a timely manner. But also afterwards, I'll go in, rewatch the recording, go back to, whoever the expert was, hey, these 2-3 points, please, am I understanding it right? And then that's one way. So if that becomes more of a culture thing, then you can really get people trained much faster and get your problem solved as well in a timely manner.
I agree with that a lot. Whenever we have a problem and somebody says, I fixed it, my question is, how did you fix it? What gave you the clue? So other people can learn and try and figure that out.
I think a lot of us in the room probably got our first experience with HPC in our bedrooms when we were kids, building our own computers, and having to debug things before even the internet, right? I mean, I'm maybe a little bit younger than some of y'all, but in the early 90s, I was building my first systems. And so, but now, kids, their only computer's an iPad or maybe a Chromebook if they're advanced, right? And so how does that also feed into the pipeline of, in the beginning, you're just not even introduced to having to figure it out on your own in a very small space, and is there some way that we can encourage more of that from industry side, or like can Apple make a high advanced iPad where you have to kind of build it yourself and debug it a little more or something, or I don't know, but
Well, yeah, and yeah, Raspberry Pi. There's all these things still out there, but if you see a kid, patching their Minecraft and putting their mods on and stuff like that, that's still the attitude and interest you want. How can I break this? Can I really break it, or I'm only breaking it a little bit? It's that sort of attitude. Teaching people HPC takes time and all that sort of stuff, but it's really hard to teach them how to be inquisitive and how to, have that mentality of being an engineer and why do things work. And I think the universities actually do an okay job. The graduates we get are excellent. They don't know much about HPC, but that's fine. We do, so we can teach them that. If they know something about HPC, that's brilliant. But if they know something about math or physics, or that's cool as well. So we try not to worry about it too much.
I'm going to put a plug in. I actually teach Lego robotics at my kids' school because I have a 5th grader who hates sports and loves robots, and so I picked that up, and it's actually a really great program that's actually pretty easy to teach, where the kids, because it's Lego, so any elementary school kid can build Lego, right? And then they actually do programming with Scratch is what it's called, but it's dragging blocks around, and they get the principles of programming right without having the difficulty of elementary schoolers don't know how to type, right? Things like this. So they can still learn, and the whole point of it is fun, and they really do enjoy it. It also started a weird Lego trading system at the school, but I didn't have anything to do with that, right? But no, it's a really fun class to teach. But the key is, when they're that young, you just want them to enjoy it. Because if they enjoy it, then when it gets harder later, right, they're still going to want to work through it. And they're like, well, it is fun once you get stuff working. So that was all.
So I would like to ask for your help solving this problem. I have a son that is finishing up his engineering degree at one of the local universities, and they're still teaching in MATLAB. And they're just recently, in the last 2 years, they moved to Python. This is all in the Windows GUI, and they're using that Legos. They're teaching with the Legos. There's some minor things here that we can change that would make a big difference, like getting them off the Windows platform to run their Python, to learn their Python. I would ask, could you approach these people and get them to change these simple things?
This is actually a huge concern from our point of view as well. Nobody's learning C, C++, Fortran. I mean, heck, we still have a huge amount of Fortran run on our system from legacy codes. Everything's Python. Actually, Anaconda is going to be the death of HPC. Yeah, see, I already touched a hot button there on somebody else. Because, I mean, it does all this crazy stuff to their environment that is supposed to be making their life easier, but you don't realize you change bash RC to source a file, and then you launch an MPI job on 1,000 cores. Every single one of those tasks is going to source that file, and yeah, it screws everything up. I don't know how to get this, because the problem is the university is also under the requirement to teach them the science, not the programming aspects and some of that. And the nice thing about Python, you can very quickly, you don't have to worry about, allocating memory. You don't have to worry about managing all your stuff. It's all just handled for you, and you can quickly go through it. It's a concern. We've tried to get more of our scientific programming classes through the engineering school. One way we solve this, we go teach our own classes now. So we finally got the engineering school to allow our HPC staff to go teach scientific programming principles so that they can understand not only just C and Fortran, but also all the other tools, Make, CMake, how to use repositories, software repositories, so you can track all your software. Unfortunately, it doesn't help our HPC folks. That helps more of them to be able to get programming type jobs. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a challenge because the university's trying to cram more in terms of what they're teaching on the science side, and they don't have time to teach all the programming aspects. The good news is the 4 classes we teach are almost always fully subscribed every semester. So we know there's demand out there for it. And so we're trying to encourage the engineering schools to incorporate this and require it as part of their curriculum so that we can get some of this going. But takes a long time to get anything done at a university.
And in the past, we've funded you hiring students.
Right.
We're doing at a different company, but I'm doing it again now.
Yeah.
Previous company, one of the students that we hired, that you hired first, trained on KNCs and KNLs, is currently the software development team leader at BP.
Good.
So
I'm glad to hear that.
funding students.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. I see a lot of it now. In fact, at supercomputing, we had kind of an ex-Taxter grouping where all the people that had actually gone off to different industries or different universities, everything kind of came by the booth, and it was a much bigger group than I expected. but that's part of our role as a university, is to train these folks up and hopefully get them out there. But yeah, it's still weighing our production operations, making sure everything gets done versus training and education. It's just a tough balance. Where a lot of our group has really good success, and something Tim even mentioned, is the K through 12, trying to encourage non-traditional people to get into STEM industries, and to get them access to robotic-controlled cars. You have to program the car to run remotely and understand how to do everything itself. And you get the kids on that type of stuff, and then they realize, oh wow, really, this is what programming is? And it's like, yeah, this is basically what it boils down to. So we're hopefully getting the pipeline started earlier so that when they get into college that they will want to go into that realm. But that takes time for that pipeline to go through. But I know some of the original kids that they started working with are now in college. They're trying to track them to see what they do and how they progress after that. But yeah. I don't know. We can't. Got to hit them early. Got to try to encourage them to get into engineering as early as we can.
Exactly. Any last questions?
I got something on that. So you said we got to get the kids in early. What I've seen over the years is with K through 12 is that the kids that want to get in get shunned away. I don't know if anybody else seen that with Lego robotics. My son was into robotics. He tried out twice. They told him no. I also volunteered for FIRST Robotics here when they came to Houston, did the big deal a couple years ago before COVID. I told that they asked on the application, what can your parent bring? And I said, well, I can volunteer. I got connections at FIRST. We could do this. And they said, no, we don't want that. So in order for us to get our kids involved in HPC, coding, engineering, anything like that of the STEM nature, is not shun them, just build better programs to invite them. One thing is Lego robotics, but there's also another industry out there that builds off of cardboard stuff that makes engineering actually fun. I can't think of the name right now, but stuff like that. And I try to push that towards my kids right now. Even my daughter, which we see a lot in our industry, is that females are very, very rare in this industry. And my daughter is now, she's like, I want to be like that. So, all we got to do is just keep pushing our kids in that direction. And when they shun them in our schools, we need to stand up and say, hey, why? We need them in there. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
So I don't know if we can fix the school system, but we have a lot of other things to fix.
Would everybody thank our panelists?